Hi, this is Tim from London, and today I'm going to talk about flangers and phasers in Ableton Live. So I've set up Ableton Live. I've got a little strings loop that can play around, and I've set up a flanger and a spectral analyzer at the back end just so that we can see what the output looks like. I'll play the string clip, and then let's change some of the effects on the flanger and see what the various controls do. You'll recall that the flanger effectively takes two copies of the same audio signal and plays them together with a very slight delay between them. So at the moment I've got the dry-wet mix set at about 50%, so it's half of the original signal plus half of the delayed signal, mixing those together. There's a delay time of about 0.1 milliseconds, and if I increase that up, we'll begin to start to hear the track thickening out as the delay comes on. But I've got another cute control up here, and that's the high pass filter, and that applies a filter to the delayed track, and if we wind that down you'll start to hear a change in timbre of the whole signal. I have another great option here, which is to increase the feedback, and the feedback takes the output signal and routes it back through the input again, so we'll start to hear some really quite dramatic effects as we push the feedback up to quite a high level. But of course the benefit with, or the big drive with flangers is to vary in a modulated way, vary that amount of delay time, and I can do that using this LFO function here. By increasing the amount of the low frequency oscillator playing, I can start to vary the delay time. I'm going to increase the rate now, and you'll start to hear that flange sound coming on with the variations to the delay time, effectively changing the speed at which the wet signal is mixed back, and it varies it going slightly faster and slightly slower, slightly faster and slightly slower to get that pulsed effect. There's also an envelope control here. I'm not using them today, but that effectively changes how the speed of the flanger kicks in and then drops away when we release the input signal. So that's the flanger. Let's have a quick look at what the phaser does. So the phaser works in a broadly similar way to the flanger. We have a modulated delay signal, but there's a few differences in the way that the phaser works to get there. Rather than just taking a straightforward delay to the signal, what a phaser does is it takes that second signal and it passes it through a number of what are called all-pass filters. And what the all-pass filter does is it lets all the frequencies through, but it actually phase shifts the frequencies in slightly different amounts depending what the frequency of that element of the tone is. Now, whereas that comb effect in the flanger is simply set up by the harmonics, and the harmonics is set about by whatever the delay time is, in a phaser we control that using this pole control here. So the number of poles effectively starts to set up the number of notches. What else have we got here? We've got controls of the dry and wet at the bottom, so again mixing those two signals together. We have a frequency control here, and the frequency control will start to set up, if you like, in a similar way than the delay time gave us that kind of sweep effect. That's what the frequency will do. And again we have a feedback control. So let's take that same string patch and see how it sounds as we change some of these controls. As I increase the frequency, you'll hear the basic kind of phaser sound. As I increase the feedback, you'll hear it starts to give us some quite interesting tones as I change the frequency. So the more feedback I get, the more of the effect I hear. And again, just as with the phaser, the flanger, what I like to hear is how that will change if I put in a low frequency oscillation over the top. So again, I can change the amount of low frequency oscillation that comes through, and I can change the rate that comes out at. And as I said before, if I want to lock that down to the speed of the pulse of the song, then again I can do that. Or I can set it manually to any given frequency that I choose. Cutting down on the number of poles gives us a different effect to the filter and just changes the sound slightly. So the phaser seems to be a slightly more subtle approach than the flanger was, which gives us a more fierce approach to it. So those are the basic controls of the phaser in Ableton Live. In principle, it works very similarly to the flanger, with the exception that the way that the filtering is applied, that kind of comb filter effect or notch filter effect, is worked out in a different mechanism. So that really wraps up my my tutorial for today, just to show you what the two effects that are basically broadly similar: a modulated delay effect in Ableton Live, one using the flanger and the other one using the phaser. I hope you've enjoyed my my quick walk through the controls of the phaser and flanger in Ableton Live, and good luck with playing around with them.